The latest reading of India's factory output is bound to leave industry watchers worried. Capital goods output, for example, saw a drop of 20% in the September period. Commendable then that Thermax managed to post a double-digit revenue growth in the second quarter. Order booking also rose nearly 30%. So the glass half full or a glass half empty, whichever you look at it. The question is, can the trend hold or should one be worried about the lower order book? Let's ask the company's MD and CEO, Mr. Unnikrishnan, who joins us right now from Pune. Mr. Unnikrishnan, good having you. Thanks for joining in. How would you look at your results? A glass half full or a glass half empty?
Well, I'm a positive, optimistic person, so I always look at the half full side, not the half empty side. Difficulties are there in the market. We cannot wish away the difficulties of the market. But in such a circumstances, there are possibilities of you performing to your best ability. Order conclusions have come down in the market. However, we have been able to register a 28% improvement in our order intake for the quarter. And certainly I need to be admitting that there was one major order worth around 470 crore, which is included in this one, an FGD order for one of the power plants. But even if I were to take part of that as a windfall, still it is a better performance than the last year's same quarter. There are sectors which aren't doing too well, but there are sectors where people are investing in the country also. I may not want to name them, but certainly the sectors I can specifically talk about are the food processing, dairy, alcohol, and many of them which are from the international investors. There are capacity building happening. They aren't unduly worried about in a country like India where consumption has come down. But consumption come down is not going to be permanent. In a country where the population is growing, lifestyle is changing, consumption are going to catch back once the sentiments improve. So projects normally would take anywhere from 1 to maybe 3 years for completion. So investment is happening. So it is not such a negative scenario, Neeraj, in my opinion, as far as order intake is concerned. Yeah, in fact, if I have to talk about international intake of orders for the current quarter, had not been very satisfactory. What we are reading is only about India, but international markets are also not building in capacity with uncertainties prevailing, trade war, equivalent, a number of things prevailing, uncertainty, political uncertainty. So internationally also the order finalizations aren't looking too good. But overall, it had been a good quarter on all the numbers. That's on top. The top line also, we had been able to rise by 12% at the back of decent enough order carry forward. And that if I were to keep away the one-time impact related to our, the deferred tax which we had taken back onto the balance sheet because we are opting for the new tax regime, 22% plus the surplus put together, impact will be around 25.1. versus what our effective tax rate had been hovering between 35 to 36%, which will certainly fetch this company a 10% tax saving for the future. So we have opted to take it, and the hit is approximately 70 crore between the PBT and the PAT. So that, if I were to add back, and the one-time 27 plus crores of rupees which we have had provisions available, it is a written off on the balance sheet, which will show an increase in the expenses. It has been an operationally good quarter also. So that's the overall take on from my side, Neeraj.
Yeah, it certainly has been. So just a two-part question to that. Just first, for accounting sake, you reckon that next quarter onwards, because of the lower tax numbers that you would be subject to or you would take on, the bottom line expansion would largely be faster or higher than the top line expansion?
Should be from the current numbers, on account of the fact that next quarter onwards, the incidence of tax on the balance sheet will be limited to 25.12%. Whereas you would have seen, if you have to go back in the past, maybe 8 or 10 quarters, we are between 34 to 36%. So that 9-10% differential will be adding on to the net profits of the company next quarter onwards.
Okay. The Q2 order booking has risen healthily, even though the order book may have come down a little bit. My question is, do you reckon that the pace of order inflows compared to the execution that a large company like Thermax does, you would still be net better off on the order backlog quarter after quarter for the next 2 or 3, or is it difficult to predict that right now looking at the challenges?
A quarter more is visible, but beyond that, visibilities can't be spoken because the pace of finalizations necessarily has come down. See, inquiries are there in the market, but there is no sense of urgency perceivable or visible for concluding orders from anybody at this point of time. And because in any case they can afford to be delaying. There are lots of my customers who have very good balance sheets available. Unleveraged, part leverage, virtual leverage capabilities are available. And for them, debt is also available. And expansion programs were conceived. But going ahead and signing on the check is something which is getting delayed right now. So because of which I may not want to make a comment right now about how would it pan out. See, there I would look at India behaves part locally and part globally. The local part is going to be picking back. I'm certain about the fact that because inaction related to capacity building will impact everybody. So as say even auto industry was crying for all the while for quite a number of quarters, but I understand month of October most of the people reported a little better in terms of order intake or maybe their sales. And progressively they'll turn around maybe in a 1 year period of time. Once they turn around the auto ancillaries and then the carbon black, the tire industry, all of them will start again going back to that. So I had orders from, say, the tire industry, three of the larger guys, the larger investment. All of them told me, let's go slow. And the first project which is taken up, we are completing. But the second, third one, in all the case, what they mentioned is let's wait for maybe 6 months to 9 months. So in my opinion, things will turn around for the consumption side. I mean, Indians can't be telling that we'll consume much lower. It's only an uncertainty which is caused by n number of reasons. But the global cues is something which is beyond prediction of anybody. There are pluses Indian companies have going to be having it with the China-America trade war. But Chinese have to dump their material somewhere. So in the global competition, we find Chinese very, very aggressive in pricing in Europe, in Southeast Asia, wherever projects are getting concluded, they become very aggressive on the prices. But in any case, companies like us always got used to when fighting with Chinese who always had a lower price. So with the current thing, they can reduce the prices another 5%. That is it. So my competitive edge would have come down by that level, but we'll have to work extra. But there is a positive feeler I am getting. At least in the advanced world, Indian companies can do better, including Thermax.
Which is quite awesome to hear. Just one last question, Mr. Unnikrishnan. Since you spoke about how the domestic scenario might look okay, and a couple and sectors that you spoke about are not something that I've heard you speak about before, are these large ticket orders or a string of pearl kind of order inflow? And therefore, do they come at the same kind of IRRs or do they come at slightly lower IRRs?
These sectors will be low ticket size orders. They won't be hundreds of crores of projects. It will be a couple of crores, the kind of size projects. Margins can be the same as what you would earn in any other larger order also over here. Because we as a company will have a preferential pricing available from them because our product is far superior than what my competitors do provide. So their margin pressure will be there, but won't be a reduction substantially.
Okay, Mr. Unnikrishnan, great to hear from you and great to hear this tone of optimism. Hopefully it turns around even sooner than you are anticipating because it's great for the markets as well. Thanks for joining in today.
Thank you.
That's Mr. M.S. Unnikrishnan of Thermax. Now, the next guest and a very special conversation with Aarti Industries, simply because